Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, fridges and microwaves, welcome to The Gunner in Aus Pod, a brand new podcast where the aim of the game is to basically sit around, chill out, chat football. I do also want to introduce a little idea. Every guest that we get on, I want to share a beer with them. We show the beer that we're drinking at the start. Very, very laid back. Have a beer, chat football. What more do you want? I wanted to start this podcast because I want to get you guys involved more. As we build a community of Arsenal fans and just football fans, I want to get you guys involved, asking questions, all that sort of stuff in the pod. We do also have a special guest today. Now, this is kind of like the beginning, right, of something new. It's the first episode. I thought the best guest for this has got to be my dad. The man that basically brought me into the world of football. So the origin story behind it all. Let's get into episode 1. Please subscribe, drop me a like, share this, and if you can, hype it as well. Apparently that's a new thing on YouTube. Welcome, my dad. Hello, Dad.
Good morning, young man. Hello and welcome from a very dark and dingy England. How are you?
I'm buzzing to have you on. You are obviously the reason I supported Arsenal. How did that actually all start and come to fruition?
Well, I think, if I'm honest, back in the day when you were young, it's more of a dad passing on thing, I think. If you remember, for the viewers, a little bit of history, my dad, Ben's granddad, was an Arsenal fan. He served in the military. He was in the artillery, which is obviously the gunners. Served in Woolwich a long time, so followed Arsenal. Mum, however, Ben's grandma and my mum.
I don't think you should mention this.
So there was a little bit of conflict in the house when we were young. But I'm fortunate to say when Ben was first born, I wore my Arsenal shirt for the occasion, and it seemed to have hit the mark. So ever since then, he seems to have followed in our footsteps, shall I say, or the male side of the family, and carried on the family tradition of supporting the mighty Gooners.
That is it. As you can see, me and Dad are wearing matching shirts because we absolutely love this shirt. It's kind of our sharing thing. I don't know where I was going with that. But let's talk a little bit more about, obviously, me, my background, and just in terms of our family and in terms of upbringing. And how Arsenal entered the family. You kind of touched upon it then. But when did you first fall in love with football? And why was it Arsenal specifically? Was it just because of Pa and the whole Woolwich Gunners link?
I think, we're going back a number of years now. When I was growing up, I lived in an estate where the sort of things that the kids these days are used to, social media, computers, phones, all that stuff. We didn't have that. We used to play out in the street. So, the general sort of consensus after school, whatever, would be literally grab a football and start kicking it around in the street. The curbs were the goalposts, if you like. Occasionally we used to have a little rec. We used to go kick up on a rec on a Sunday afternoon. We'd be lucky when the games were on and stuff. They used to leave the nets up for a period of time after the game, so we used to pinch the nets, play football, and that's what we did. We didn't have social media, we didn't have computers, we didn't have Xbox 5s, all that sort of stuff. We were literally out. If the street lights are still on, you're out playing football, and that's probably where the passion grew. I was always a keeper when I was young. Wasn't very good with my feet. Unfortunately, my son didn't suffer from that, and he was actually quite a good footballer coming up through the school years, playing for the school and playing for local sides, stuff like that, which I used to enjoy. So football's always sort of been part of my life. There's been times, obviously, with work and stuff like that, moving around, that I won't say you lose touch, but maybe not as proactive as a fan, going to visit stadiums and stuff like that, and then you get back into it. So. It's always been there.
You're telling me I'm on the other side of the world.
It's always been there. I mean, and the really nice thing is the fact that you've enjoyed it as well, and it's been part of your life. So I've been involved with that. So where maybe I'm a little bit older now and I can't play myself and this, that, the other, I watch it through the TV. Obviously, watch pods and things. Watch you play. And now, subsequently, I tend to watch it on the TV because getting tickets, as you know, at the Emirates is rather difficult these days. Or go to the pubs, watch it round the ground.
I've never actually asked you this, but what was it like supporting Arsenal back then compared to watching Arsenal now? Obviously,
Well,
probably a different caliber depending on when we're sort of talking, but
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think there's a lot of guys, sort of socially where you live can sometimes denote who you support. The old adage, being an Arsenal fan, you speak to most Man United fans, and none of them have been to Manchester in their life. When I grew up, most of my friends were all Chelsea fans because of the location of where we lived and so forth. So I suppose maybe a little bit different, following father's footsteps and stuff. It's like with any football club. I mean, there's tough years and then there's great years. There's invincible seasons, and then there's seasons where you don't seem to do nothing and everyone just takes a mick out of you. But you never lose that love. Your team is your team and you follow it through thick and thin, don't you? So I suppose I've always been a bit different, hence with the shirt. Most people wear the traditional red and white, but I've always loved this one. It's a little bit different, isn't it? So
I like the subtlety of the colours. Like, even though it is still a bit in your face, I like how it's darker and it's not as like bright as some of the other ones. So yeah,
I have to say though, mine's getting a little bit threadbare now. I mean, I've worn it an awful lot, and it's been around a few years, so it's a bit of a treasure now, national treasure.
If there's any football shirt companies that want to sponsor us, can you please get my dad a new one of these shirts because he adores it. Was football a big thing when you grew up, like in the household? Obviously, with me, it was. Maybe not for the first 5 years or whatever. I used to run away from the football rather than run towards it. But in terms of growing up, I think you told me you went to a few random games when you could, like of other teams, just to go and watch a game of football. But was it quite big in the household, or was it mainly when you were sort of out with your mates?
Not so much in the household, if I'm honest. I mean, back in the day, I'm talking times where you had TV and there was 4 channels. You still had Match of the Day and stuff like that on a Saturday night, but it just wasn't as accessible as it is now. We didn't have the technology that we have now, so you can. I mean, let's face it. I mean, how many different channels can you watch football on now? It's crazy. If you're fortunate enough to be able to go to the games, that was great. Our local sort of fix really would have been watching Aldershot down in the lower leagues and so forth. I can remember back in the day, Southampton coming out was a really big thing, and watching Peter Shilton. That's a name from the past. I can always remember standing behind one of the goals at Aldershot, and Southampton were there in a cup game, and I was literally stood behind a goal, probably 8 foot behind him, and I can't believe how big this guy was. He was absolutely enormous, and he had hands like shovels. It was crazy, but that was a treat back in them days. You didn't have an awful lot of money and stuff, and as I say, it's a long journey up to North London and so forth. You watch a little bit on the TV, but it was more about playing the game and enjoying the game. Yeah, I mean, I can remember standing on tube stations in London and seeing like an opposing set of fans come in and running for my life.
Okay, so let's move on to a couple quick fire questions. Off the top of your head, what was the first Arsenal shirt that you remember?
Oh, I mean, obviously there's the red and white shirts. I think the one that sort of sticks out in my mind, I couldn't tell you the season. It was a JVC shirt.
Nice.
With the old Victoria Crescent crest on it. It was black and it was bright yellow. That's the one that sort of sticks in my head. Just, again, it's different. It was very, very different at the time. Yeah. I quite like the different shirts, as you probably gathered.
I'll have to try find a photo of it and put it on the thing so the viewers can see. What was the first ever football match, I suppose Arsenal game, that you watched, or like whether it was on TV or live, or maybe one on TV and live, if you can remember?
I think, probably not so much TV, but the one that sticks in my mind was my very first Arsenal live game. And that was Upton Park against West Ham. Obviously, West Ham have moved now, but back in the day, it was Upton Park. But like I said today, it was the 8th of April 1987, which sort of seems a lifetime ago now. And I'm sorry to say that we lost that game 3-1. Which was a little bit disappointing. But there's a blast from the past there. Liam Brady scored our own goal. There's a name for you.
Wow.
And I can remember, I was only young at the time, and I can remember coming back out the ground. They kept all the home fans in, or supposedly, and we come out the ground to go to the tube station, and we're walking down the road, and 2 things sprung to mind. Was firstly, how many fans actually had got out of the ground and they were lying in the streets. which was quite intimidating, walking down the centre of the road with all these fans sort of baying at you from the sides. And the other thing was the police horses. The police were on horses, and I'd never seen anything like it before in my life. They actually had indicators on their stirrups, believe it or not, and these horses were enormous. but we survived and we got home. But as I say, unfortunately, we lost that game 3-1. But that was my first ever Arsenal game. So back in 1987, scary.
Wow, that's crazy. That being said, obviously going back to that sort of time period, who were, my favourite players, my first ever favourite players that I can remember physically watching and putting loads of time and effort into learning everything about them and watching them, was probably like Fabregas, early days of Theo Walcott, Jack Wilshere, and then it slowly stemmed into like Aaron Ramsey, and obviously Alexis Sanchez was a little bit later on. But who was like my first favourite player was Fabregas, but who was yours? Do you remember, or who were the first couple of players that were kind of knocking about as like the favourite players at that time?
I think I probably like Liam Brady. Liam Brady. Well, it depends how far I want to go back. I think probably if I'm, it's very, very difficult to say choose your favourite players and all this sort of stuff, because there's different times in the club's history. I'll go back a few years and so forth. Some players I've forgotten about. Sometimes I look back on nostalgia stuff and I think, oh my God, yeah, I forgot about him and so forth. But I think sort of, and if I had to name names, I'd probably say keeper-wise, I'd probably go Pat Jennings. He sort of suffered a little bit from the Peter Shilton sort of thing, where he was absolutely enormous and he had massive hands, and some of the saves he made for being such a big man, he was so agile. But again, the game was different then. You had to be big and physical back in those days. You didn't get like the protection of the refs and the VAR and all this sort of stuff now. Some of the rules now, back in the day, the players I think wouldn't have survived. And stacking that up as well, defence-wise, I'd probably always go Tony Adams. When I was growing up, he was just
he's the guy.
He was a legend, he was an absolute unit, took no messing off of anybody. And again, that was the way the game was. And then probably maybe, I think sort of like moving up sort of midfield wise, you can be a little bit more skillful, a little bit quicker and all that stuff, insight into the game and that, I'd 100% go Bergkamp. Absolutely loved Bergkamp. Some of his touches, that iconic goal where he flipped that player around at Newcastle, flipped the ball around that Newcastle player and scored. He was just insane to watch,
I have a question just before you go on to your forward. I think you're going to say.
I might do, yeah.
Are you going to say Thierry Henry?
No, I'm not actually.
Oh, okay. All right. Go on then.
No. I think if I had to go forward, and again, I'll go back a little bit further, I'd say Ian Wright. Ian Wright was just
That's a great shout.
An electric, what's the word? An electric sort of different player. He just had everything. He'd be a fox in the box. He could play a ball over the top. He was like a whippet. He was tenacious. He had skill. He just put balls in the back of the net that you just didn't think were possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think Henry's obviously got to be up there. I think Henry, he has scored some world-class goals, I'll be lying. He come a close second. He was a little bit more of a come in from the left-hand side, sort of take on a couple of players, hit it from the corner of the box and curl it into the far corner. That's how I sort of remember Henry.
So you're seeing it more as... But so you're basing this on out-and-out striker as opposed to attacker overall? Because I know there's going to be people in the comments saying, how on earth are you saying Wrighty over Thierry? Just because everyone sees Thierry as like the Mr. Arsenal, like the man, So I just want, for your protection.
Yeah. I'm talking a different era of football. Back in the day,
no, of course. He was the guy,
he was so out good. Striker. To me, Thierry Henry was an attacking midfielder. Different position.
Yeah.
So,
that's
but again, I love them both. Obviously, I'll be lying if I wasn't. But if you striker wise, always Ian Wright.
All right, I've got a question.
Yes.
If you've got a Sunday league team, and you could add Ian Wright or Dennis Bergkamp, who are you adding to that team? You can only choose one.
That's really, really difficult. It would depend on the mix of the team. Getting technical now, aren't I?
All right. If you had to build a team around one of those players, who would it be?
Well, again, I don't know. I mean, you've got with Bergkamp, you've got that player that's going to pick players out and he's going to control the game. If you got Wright, you get the ball to him and he's going to score. So I'd probably go Wright.
Yeah,
you need goals, don't you, to win games?
Yeah, true, you do. I suppose Dennis Bergkamp could just whack it in from anywhere, really, if it's Sunday League. But
well, let's face it. I mean, Dennis Bergkamp in a Sunday League team is probably going to get kicked up in the air in 5 minutes, isn't he?
Yeah, true. Injured after 3 minutes, especially if you played him now. So let's move on to a little throwback zone, right?
Ooh, okay.
Where we're talking, I mean, we've already jumped straight into the nostalgia side of things, sort of jumping back. But let's talk Invincibles.
2003-2004 season.
Yes, that sort of era. What was it actually like watching the Invincible season live?
If I had to sum it up in a word, I think it would be dream. It's like, one of those where you start the season full of anticipation.
Yeah.
And then you continue the season and you're doing quite well. Obviously, there was a few 0-0s, few draws, stuff like that, which sort of, there's two mindsets. There's, we went for the whole season unbeaten. But then some games we drew in. So it's sort of, there's not to say, well, you didn't win every game that season. I've heard that many a time. But then we haven't lost every game that season, which, means you're playing as a team, in my view. I think there's sort of an element of like, it's really hard to describe. You sort of get to a point in the season, a bit like most seasons, I suppose, where you sort of think, oh, you know what, we can do this. And then you start thinking, oh, I don't know, we've got a couple of tough games coming up. So there's the ebbs and the troughs and all the rest of it. And then ultimately, when you do it, it's almost just like a numb feeling. It's like you just can't describe it. It's the buzz of you've actually achieved something when it's against all the odds. No one's ever done it since. I've been fortunate to go to the museum, see the trophy, and that.
That transitions quite nicely into my next question. Sorry to butt in, but I think you might answer this about me asking it. Sorry. Did it feel that special at the time? Like, did you understand how big of an achievement, or was it after, in hindsight, when you realised, after all the interviews, or was it as soon as the final whistle went, you went, Jesus Christ, that's nuts? Did you notice in that moment what you'd actually done?
I think, if I'm honest, no. I think as history's gone on and time's gone on, and you think we're now 20 years on, and no one else has come anywhere. Well, so they've come near it, but they haven't actually achieved it. So I think every year the clock ticks that actually no one else does it. It
just
sort
gets
of
more
makes
special.
It a bigger prize, a bigger I don't know, a bigger moment in history, if you like. Because let's face it, there's just some awesome teams out there. From various different disguises or different guises and different parts of the country and stuff, and you think I hate to say it, but look at City. The strength of their squad over recent years, and you think they've never managed to achieve it, and all they have achieved. So every time that happens and someone else loses that game in that season, you're like, yeah, but we've done it. Bring it on, you know what I mean?
It's definitely a flex.
Yeah. It's a special moment. Someone will achieve it again, I'm sure. When that'll be, I don't know. Who that'll be, I don't know. But I think the more that time passes from when we actually achieve that to the current day, just makes it more and more special, as you say. You know what I mean? And the fact that we haven't done it.
Yeah.
That's that one thing in our Arsenal, excuse the pun, that we've got and no one else can brag about.
That's it. And that golden Premier League trophy sits very nicely as you walk into the dining lounge at the Emirates, isn't it?
It certainly does. We've been there, done that. Yeah.
In terms of the Invincibles, in comparison to this season, I actually made a video today saying that we don't feel like a champion side. Like, we're still lacking creativity. We're still like, we're not looking convincing. And look at the Nottingham Forest game. Like, I personally think champions would have gone and, like, Martinelli, someone would have finished that in a title winning side. Do you know what I mean? I think. I don't know. I think we've just been playing in second gear and we look sluggish. And I don't know whether that's because we're tired. I don't know whether that's because it's not a question of whether they want it, because obviously they want it. They're footballers. They want to win stuff. It's a no-brainer, but I just don't know what it is at the moment. So I think I know what the answer is going to be, but in comparison to looking back at the Invincibles compared to what we are now, obviously it's two completely different times of football, and I have no doubt in the Invincibles are 5 times as good as the current squad at the moment. But in terms of like chemistry, leaders in the team, like the passion and like the mindset and like the want that you can see from the players, is there any sort of similarities? And what do you think, growing up watching the Invincibles, what do you think that the current team need to improve on to go that extra step?
Yeah, that's a big question. I mean,
Sorry, I've just loaded that all onto you.
No, it's fine. I think there's a couple of things you need to consider. I mean, one is back in a day, there was a lot less games, is one. So,
True.
And I think, it wasn't unheard of for players to play with injuries. There's a big difference there. You know, the guys these days, they're athletes, let's face it. They can all run like 100 metres in less than 10 seconds, stuff like that. That didn't happen back in the day. The game's a lot more technically different now. It's all about players counting out players. I think, the way that, that we play a game, they're very much drilled into playing in a certain style in a certain way and stuff. Whereas back in the day, I think it's a little bit more free-flowing. I think the technical ability of the players is not much different, really. They've all got passion, they've all got ball skills, they've all got this, that, the other. But sometimes I feel that players are maybe a little bit impeded.
Do you think it's maybe the infrastructure and all that sort of stuff from management and how everything's sort of commercialised and all that sort of stuff, and how 100%, proper it is now then?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's a lot more about money now, let's face it. I mean, cool blimey, probably, let's face back the Invincibles probably got paid like 30 quid a week, a pizza and a packet of fags, you know what I mean? Now they're paid like £400,000 a week or something, it's just ridiculous. Little things, how the game's changed, like I said, Ian Wright, I mentioned him a few times, long ball over the top. Doesn't happen really much these days. Occasionally, if there's a mistake in defence or something, you might get a break one-on-one on the keeper. But all this playing out of the back, which absolutely, I can't stand it. It just, mate, how I've still alive, not had a heart attack with some of the near misses and the moments we've had of playing that ball out from the back.
Dodgy passes and all that, yeah, I hear you.
I'm used to we used to play it, just like get your foot behind it, get it up the pitch, get it out of the way, get it out of danger, So sometimes the squad we've got now is just amazing. But it's very, very technical now. I mean, you've seen some of the stats that come after that, how people move around on the pitch and stuff, and how many passes they've made and how many accurate passes they've made. I mean, we've never recorded anything like that back in the day. It's just you got on and played a really heartfelt, strong, physical game of football, which obviously Arsenal at that particular time, they had a really good blend of very quick players, very skillful players, very insightful players.
Very big players.
And a rock solid defence. It's probably the best way I can sort of describe. I probably haven't answered that, but sort of try and give you a feel of what I sort of think is. It's difficult to build comparisons because it's a different era of football.
Of course. So. It's like even recent times, like when people say, who's better, Eden Hazard or Bukayo Saka? Like, yeah, you can look at the stats and you can say this or this, but like, it's different eras of football. Like, if you were to take Thierry Henry and Mohamed Salah both in their prime, I would love to see that. Like, do you know what I mean? But it would never happen. So it's almost impossible to say, Mohamed Salah's better. But technically, he's pretty much playing a different game because it's so different.
See, I look at it a slightly different way. I mean, yeah, there's all the technical data, skills and things. I don't even try and profess to understand how these technical things all work into making a good player and a not so good player not so good player. I mean, for me, it's about going to the ground. If I can see someone's driven, someone's passionate, they're trying really hard, they make me enjoy what I'm watching. That's a good player for me. Do you know what I mean? It's not about how many accurate passes they made, this, that, the other. It's sort of a bit about like, you go up the wing, you lose the ball. Do you track back and try and win it, or do you stand there and go, what happened there? It's about that desire. I come from a culture where you're playing for the shirt, not for the 400 grand a week. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I hear that. That being said, is there a player that you think doesn't get enough credit from modern fans? Like whether that's a player now or whether that's like a player in the past, Emirates era or before. What would you say? Maybe one for the current setup and one from the past.
Yeah, I mean, I always sort of think the middle of the park, sort of that defensive midfield role is the one. I'd say if you look at like now, Zumbamendi, you take out a couple of screamers that he's scored in games. You never really hear his name, and you sort of almost forget he's on the pitch. But he's such an influential player in that team. It's more about these days. It's like who scored the goal, who got the assist, did the keeper make an amazing world class save, and oh my God, look at that tackle the defenders made the box. The middle of the park always seems to get missed out in my view.
I agree.
Someone like him, go back a little bit, I suppose. Patrick Vieira, another one. Same sort of position. I mean, he was an absolute rock for us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Again, but it would be more about who scored the goals and who saved the goals rather than like that middle bit of the park, keeping us safe and then giving us the opportunity to move forward, winning the second ball, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So those would be the sort of players I think that go a bit quiet. And sometimes I think if you don't hear their names, that means we're having a good game.
Yeah, no, that's it. I think people this season, like Yuri and Timber, Calafiori, Zubimendi, those players that aren't in like sexy positions, as I would call it, they're not like a left winger that cuts in and then scores a worldie like Lamine Yamal or Bukayo Saka. Or they're not like an out-and-out Haaland striker that just is a beast in front of goal. But with all of that, you don't get that unless you have a good foundation with like your Timbers and your Zubimendis. And I think people just look past it. So yeah, I completely agree with you. Zubamendi's massively up there. I think he's without a doubt, our best signing of the summer.
Oh, 100%, yeah. And again, you've got to think, how the game's evolved now. I mean, you're talking about wing-backs now almost. When I started first watching Arsenal and so forth, we didn't have wing-backs. You had left-backs and you had left-wingers.
Yeah.
And your left-back would stay left-back. You know what I mean?
You've now got like inverted full-backs and everything, like false-backs, all these crazy terms.
Yeah, 100%. And Arteta's a master. He seems to be able to buy players that can play multiple positions, which is great for us. Back in the day, that didn't happen. You had a position, and that's where you played, and that was what you did, and you excelled at it. You know what I mean? So this is where things have changed over the years. I suppose value for money and all that sort of stuff. You get a player that can play 2 or 3 positions. It's like having 3 players, isn't it?
Yeah, honestly, it's good. Versatile players save you money. The only issue is now they cost 3 times as much anyway, so you might as well make sure they're versatile.
Well, I reckon everything costs 3 times as much now, doesn't it?
Yeah, true. Probably even more. I mean, let's move on to a little debate then. Some quick fire debating. Let's do this. Let's talk about football then versus football now. Again, I don't mean for this to come across like me like trying to make out you're old with the whole jumping back and in time frames and stuff, but I just think it's good to see a different comparison to what I've grown up watching compared to you, because I want to learn. I'm sure the viewers want to learn as well, so it's cool to hear sort of everyone's different perspectives. So yeah, that being said, is football better now or was it better then?
I think it's great now. It's a lot more accessible but inaccessible. I do agree with the fact that, like, if you're a football fan, you can watch football like day in, day out, all the rest of it, and everything's on. European football, world football, domestic football, everything. If you want it, it's accessible. I don't necessarily agree with the way that advertisers got involved and they charge you a fortune for the privilege of watching it. But that's just the way things have evolved, and that's the way it is. I think from being a supporter, it's much better because you can access your team and so forth much easier. Transfer windows are just so exciting now because there's so much speculation. There's so much sort of false stories and things that give you hope, and you can't help but get involved in it. We've had conversations personally about it. Where I've seen this, have you seen this? No, Dad, that's rubbish. Or Dad, that might happen, and da da da. So that side of things, I think, is brilliant because back in the old days, unless it happened, you never knew. You know what I mean? You had to wait for the newspaper to come out in the morning to read the newspaper to tell you.
Yeah, I think I'm on the other side of this. So I think, don't get me wrong, in terms of accessibility, like obviously now things are more expensive. Like going to a game, watching games, having subscriptions for all the apps and stuff that you need to watch the matches is obviously not ideal. In terms of the accessibility, though, love the mug. Accessibility, it's good, but I think in terms of like playing football, I prefer a rough game. So I would have said back in the day, more physical, more down to like just a load of lads just playing football. It's not like, oh no, like the manager's not telling, right, you play like this, don't play to your strengths, but do this how I want it. Do you know what I mean? It's not as like structured. It's a bit more, he's really good because he's doing what he does best. And if he wants to do a Brazilian flick, he's going to do it regardless of whether he's in the Premier League because it's just what he does. Do you know what I mean? I hate the whole structure thing. That's what I was going to say. In terms of transfer news, don't get me wrong, I make videos all the time about transfer videos. I'm guilty as. However, think about how good it was on deadline day when we signed Mesut Ozil. No one had an absolute clue that Arsene Wenger was lining up a cheeky Mesut Ozil from Real Madrid. How sick was that? People were going mental. No one had an inkling at all that was going on. And I just think now, again, I know I make videos on rumours and all that sort of stuff. It's just because I enjoy it. But I think the fact that we have like Fabrizio Romano and we have all these reporters that find out stuff before we actually get told it, and people leak information and all that sort of stuff, it kind of takes away the excitement, in my opinion. Because I get excited, don't get me wrong, but I just think you'll hear something like, oh, Arsenal are monitoring Keenan Yildiz, for example. So instantly you're thinking, oh my God, are we going to sign him? And then it's like, there's nothing forever. They're just monitoring him. It's fine. But then they could say, oh, Arsenal are in a bidding war with Chelsea for Mihailo Mudryk. And then you're like, oh my God, like we're going to get someone. And I feel like you're chasing a high sort of thing. Because as soon as you've seen like one transfer window where Arsenal have made a signing, you go back to Fabrizio Romano's page and then you want to follow him. And then you want to, every time there's a post about Arsenal being interested in another player, you're instantly hooked. I remember summer transfer window, every morning I'd wake up straight away. I'd go on Fabrizio Romano's story and look through his story to see if there was any Arsenal transfer news. But like, I don't like how indulgent and how addictive that is. I think it was better back in the day when you knew nothing until the deal was physically done and Mesut Ozil was literally on the plane on his way for a medical. I prefer that because then you don't get your hopes up as well. Do you know what I mean? But then I wouldn't have as many video ideas.
Yeah, no, sure enough. I mean, let's face it. I mean, the world's changed now. I mean, you earn money off of people looking at views and things from your posts. So the more you can dangle that hook and hook people in and get them to continuously watch you and so forth. And some of it, I could argue is a bit misleading, some of it not. But I still think there's a little bit of excitement in the transfer window. I mean, it's a lot more advertised now about, and let's face it, I mean, every team probably looks for players at these windows and so forth, exiting players and bringing players in. I think the financial fair trade thing obviously has changed things an awful lot. You've got to keep within your budgets and that type of thing, so that can restrict teams and so forth.
Not that many do.
No, yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, a really good example of that is Eze last season. Where did that come from? It was up bang, 24 hours. He's an Arsenal player. So
he can still be done. An hour away from Spurs, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do sort of think with Arsenal, I don't know. I mean, maybe your viewers will agree or disagree, but I think if Arsenal are linked with a player and it hits the social media heights, oh wow, Ben Kinsman's going to sign for Arsenal, and then it goes dead quiet, then that to me is a sign that we're seriously looking at that player. If, say, for example, it continues that Ben Kinsman, getting blah, 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 then it doesn't seem to happen. That's how I've sort of read it, rightly or wrongly. And then occasional curveball like the Eze deal comes up. But it seems to be, in a minute, we seem to be focusing on the future. So we're buying an awful lot of young talent. And as you can see, like Fergie did back in the day, his Magic 5 or whatever it was he brought in. We seem to be emanating a similar sort of process, where we're bringing in players. We've brought in some experience as well, which is great. And we've got some characters in the dressing room. But I think the future for Arsenal is amazing. I think, we're just going to go from strength to strength now. And, we've got big money to pay on players because we're bringing in homegrown players. They're not costing us anything, and they're real talent. So I think, the ethos is great. I think the only thing if I'm honest, about our current situation is, I think we're a little bit one-trick pony for me. Even with the players and things we've brought in, we've got players that are very similar to the players in the same position. So we seem to play a similar style of football and a similar game, whatever. I think the only real difference is somewhere like, say, for example, you take Madueke and Saka. They're both really, really talented players, both play on the right wing. The only difference for me is like Saka will tend to cut in and square the ball, whereas Madueke will get it head down, he'll go straight for that byline, look across it, so he's a lot more direct. Which is a slightly different twinge. You can bring one on and it sort of changes the game up a little bit. But I think generally we're a little bit samey. But that's where I think we struggle sometimes, things like with the low blocks and all that stuff, because we play the same sort of ball. I mean, how many times, as an Arsenal fan, I'm sure, again, some of your viewers are going to feel similar, some will probably disagree, but, instead of playing that ball through, we square it. We sort of sit around that sort of 25 yards out, 30 yards out, and just keep pinging the ball left to right, back to middle, back to left, back to right. I think we should be probing more, and I think that's probably where the likes of Gyökeres are struggling at the minute, because it's just not getting the supply. And because we're pushed up so high, they sit all their players in front of their goal, which makes it really difficult to be able to play a ball like that. So we need to be much quicker, move the ball. I mean, when we do it, we're awesome. Don't get me wrong. Some games you watch, it's just a joy to watch. The ball's fizzing around, one-touch football, and it's all over the place. And then players are in on the goal, one-on-one on the keeper, or got one defender to beat, or they'll curl it around the defender, top bins, all that sort of stuff. That's exciting. But the other thing I think is that we seem to have got into the last 15 minutes or so of a game. We almost seem to sit back, go defensive, and let them come on us, and it's cost us. And I keep seeing that, and I don't know why we're doing it. I don't know whether it's fatiguing the players, they're tired, whether it's lack of concentration. I think we were talking the other day, weren't we? And we said about Ben White mentioned it in a post-match press release sort of thing. He was saying we just lost concentration at the end of the game, and I can see that more and more, and I don't know quite why that is. And I think that's something certainly that Arteta is aware of, but he needs to be doing something about it. You know what I mean? Because that is potentially costing us.
That has been like the last, I'd say, prime example is the Aston Villa game. Every single game since then, other than the Portsmouth match, I think, we've leaked goals in the second half of the second half of the second half, if that makes sense. And the fact that Ben White can see that, the fact that Ben White has come out and literally said it, like 3 or 4 games into it happening every single week consecutively, surely if he can see it, all the players can see it, the fans can see it, obviously, and Arteta can see it. So I don't understand why it's not like they're not doing anything about it quicker. Like 3 or 4 games, that could lose you the entire title. 1 game could, let alone 4 games. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm frustrated because, but like we don't seem to do anything about it. And in my opinion, the whole Gyökeres situation, in terms of him getting service, I don't know whether you see this actually, but the last couple of days there's been a viral clip and a load of screenshots coming out. When we played Chelsea, Saka goes to, basically all he has to do is square the ball to Gyökeres and he's in on goal. He's just him and the goalkeeper. Saka cuts back, completely ignores the Gyökeres run, so it was just before the Gyökeres goal. But when Gyökeres was celebrating, he pushes Saka out the way when Saka comes up to him. And then later in the game, he was like, Gyökeres was talking to Gabriel and they were like, he was basically like mouthing it off to Gabriel about Saka, saying like, I don't know why he's passing me the ball. Or it looks like they're having that conversation. So I don't think that's an issue, like a long-term issue between those 2 players. But I think that's frustration. But I am also frustrated because in my eyes, we've done absolutely nothing about the situation where Gyökeres is not getting the service he needs. Because if you look at Ødegaard, he's meant to be our centre attacking mid. He's meant to be our creative spark in the middle. If not, it's Eze. I actually think Eze's better at finding Gyökeres than Ødegaard. As soon as Ødegaard picks that ball up, regardless of where he is, even if he's right behind Gyökeres makes a diagonal run. Doesn't matter which direction he's going in. There's literally a video. He goes like this. Ødegaard doesn't play the ball. He just dribbles. Gyökeres then makes another run, again, the other way, diagonal, doesn't play the ball again. Happened 3 times, and then Ødegaard just plays it out wide. He just plays it out wide all the time. And I think that's a massive issue that, again, Arteta's doing nothing about. And he wonders why Gyökeres is getting annoyed at like Saka and that for not providing him service.
Well, I think that's the thing that's missing, the directness. You know, it's all this lovely build-up play, the final perfect goal and all that, but sometimes you just have to dig down. You know, chuck a long ball over the top, let him run onto it. You know, we've got the players, we've got the speed and all the rest of it. You know, that's another weapon in our arsenal. You know, trying to draw it out. I've seen it again. We've done it again. We play the ball around at the back. We draw the teams out so there's a space at the back. And what do? We just continue to pretty footy, pass it up there, square it, pass it up, square it, pass it up, square it. Yeah, what about that long killer ball? You know,
there's no urgency. I feel like there's no urgency either.
It's almost got to be that nice gentle build up and then that killer pass that puts someone through that scores an amazing goal. Well, not all goals have to look like that. You know what I mean? So,
I actually wish, let's say like the Jack Wilshere, Aaron Ramsey sort of era with like Walcott and that, when it was kind of the fast-paced counter-attack build-up play, how many times did we score just from immaculate passes on the counter-attack? If we had that same urgency and we had that sort of counter-attacking game about us, we would ruin teams. If we were doing what we were doing, but we weren't as predictable and we'd switch it up to that every now and again when we can counter-attack, I think we'd be unstoppable. That's it. I mean, the final question, I think you've kind of answered it throughout the podcast. But do you feel optimistic about where the club is heading? And do you think this is our year? Do you think we're going to win a major trophy, whether it's the FA Cup, the Champions League, the title? What do you think? Give us a little prediction. What are Arsenal Football Club going to do this season?
Okay, right. So I think, firstly, to answer your question about the future, I think the future is awesome. I think it is really good. I think the way that we're bringing through the youth, we're attracting like star quality players, I think is really exciting. And this is going to be very contentious. I think this season we will achieve a double. I can't
That's what I think as
say
well.
hand on heart which trophies we're going to lift, but I do think we will lift 2 trophies this season. I think with the depth of squad we got, I think with the passion, I think we'll probably stumble through one. A little bit shaky, nerves, all the rest of it. And I think once they've got that winning mentality, I think they'll carry that on for a second. I'd love to say all 4, but I'm a realist. I think I'll settle for 2, and I think 2 would be exceptional. And then if we can strengthen through the summer next year, out some of the fringe players, all that sort of stuff, bring in some new world-class talent, which I think we will do, then I think the world's your oyster for next season and moving forwards.
What would you prefer, a Premier League title or a Champions League?
That's a matter. I've been asked this before, actually. Wow. I would take either of them. The 2 together, I think the Prem. I don't know why it's the Prem. And everyone says, "Oh yeah, but Europe's like da da da." But I think the Prem's probably a harder thing to win, if I'm honest.
I agree.
So that would be my thing. I think probably if you pin me down, I'd probably say a domestic cup and the league. I think this season.
I agree. I think it'll be Carabao Cup or FA Cup and the league. I think the league title. It would be so good. But guys, that is all we have time for today. That was episode 1. Thank you, Dad, for coming on. Will you be back on the pod?
If I'm invited, I'm always game.
Buzzing.
Thoroughly enjoyed
Next
it.
time we might have some beers, so that'd be better, wouldn't it? But yeah, guys, drop us actually I was going to say follow, but it's YouTube. Subscribe, leave a like. Please hype the video. That's a new thing that never used to do when I was making YouTube videos when I was younger. And if you want to share it, as I say, this is the first episode. I'm not expecting it to get loads of views, but if you have enjoyed and you've watched this far through the video, please share it with your mates if they support Arsenal. And if there's anything that we can upgrade on, whether it's visuals, whether it's audio, whether it's topics to discuss, anything that you guys want to see, let us know in the comments, and we'll get things flowing. All right?